Okay, welcome back. We're continuing learning together Torah Chaf Gimel, Torah 23, and in Likutei Moharan Tinyan, and the second volume of Likutei Moharan. Last time we read through the piece relatively quickly, just to get a sense of what Rabbi Nachman is talking about. He's talking about the topic of Simchah, and he talks about Simchah from the perspective of how the experience of Simcha can be analogized to a group of people that are dancing in a circle. And when the group of people start dancing in a circle, the people who are not feeling up to it, who are not feeling happy and joyful, who are not besimcha, they go and they sit on the outside of the circle. And Rabbi Nachman tells us that the avoda of Simcha, part of what Simcha entails, is having the people in the circle, having the part of us that is misameach, that is joyful, go and grab the people sitting outside the circle, those who are sitting in atzvus and sadness and depression, in mar shechora and gloominess and darkness, and dragging them in, bal karcham, against their will, pulling them into the circle. Not that they're happy, they're not happy, but you pull them into the circle and they dance around the circle with the happy people. And so Rabbi Nachman is describing the idea that, and he expands on it throughout the piece, that the natural consequence of joy is that joy fills us, but joy pushes the sadness within us to the sides. So now we get to actually experience our joy, and that's a wonderful thing. But the sadness and the depression and the parts of us that are disappointed and in a state of mar shechor, in a state of katnus, they go off to the side on their own, but they're still there. They're still waiting in the wings to come back when the joy subsides. And what happens is that then the simcha is supposed to pull the darkness, pull the sadness in, and force it to participate in the simcha. And then Rabbi Nachman talked about it, an additional level. One level of simcha, he said, is to drag the sadness which flees from simcha, drag it into the circle, drag it into the simcha, and force it to sort of act happy, so to speak. Force it to act happy. It's not happy. The sadness is still there. The mar shechor is still there. The atzvus is still there. There's still disappointment. There's still gloominess. There's still depression, but you drag it in, so you put a smile on your face and act like everything is good, and the parts of you that are not happy, they go along with the parts of you that are happy. That's one level. And then Rabbi Nachman said there's a second level, a level that is ma'ala yisera. There's a higher level, a higher sense, a more intense level of simcha, a more intense avoda of simcha. If we're going to, right, Rabbi Nachman sets this up in Torah Chaf Gimel. This is all an avoda because we can take the simcha and we can do things with the simcha. We can transform our own experience by focusing and reflecting on the simcha and using the simcha in these ways. So one sense of the avoda, an initial sense of the avoda, is to grab the sadness that flees away from the simcha but is still there and pull it into the circle, pull it into the simcha. And now the sadness is in the simcha as opposed to outside the simcha, and it pastes a smile on its face and it looks happy. It's not happy, it's still sad, but it looks happy. It participates instead of bifurcating oneself, and there's the sad part of me over here and the happy part of me over here. Instead, you take the happy part and you pull the sad part into it and you integrate, and the sadness and the happiness coexist in the happiness, in the joy with each other. That's one level. And then the second level, the higher level, he said, and this is what we're going to focus on tonight because it's particularly relevant to Purim, and we'll get back to the first level of forcibly dragging sadness into simcha and what that means and why we would do that and what the milah of faking it in that way might be. We'll talk about that Be'ezras Hashem next week, but this week we'll talk about the second level. The second level is not just to drag the sadness into the circle of simcha. The second level is actually, Rabbi Nachman says, to transform lehisapech, to transform, like v'nahapachu of Purim. We're going to take the sadness and transform the sadness into joy, into simcha. That's the higher level of simcha. Not to just pull Simcha into the circle, into the dancing circle, and force the Simcha to be force the sadness to be integrated into the Simcha as if the sadness is happy, but it's not really. But the higher level is to actually, Rabbi Nachman says, actually successfully transform Simcha, transform atzvos, transform sadness into Simcha, into joy. So to focus on this, what I want to focus on is really, how does this happen? How does this happen? So to talk about, or to think through a little bit about how this happens, how it is that we can transform our atzvos, our sadness, into simcha, I want to look briefly at two other things that Rabbi Nachman talks about in two other places. One in Likutei Moharan, and one in Likutei Halachos. And I want to begin just with a piece in Likutei Halachos in Hilchos Gvias Chov Mea Yisomim in Choshen Mishpat, Halacha Gimel. There, Rabbi Nachman talks about how the inevitable reality of the human experience is that we go through two different ways of experiencing HaKadosh Baruch Hu and experiencing HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence in our lives. And he says as follows. He says, Nimtza, sheyesh l'chal adam shnei bechinos avodos. Every single person has two different aspects, two different facets of avodas Hashem. Avoda achas, one of those avodas is bechinas mala kol haaretz kavodo. One of those avodas are the sense of male kol haaretz kavodo, the idea that all of the world is filled with the kavod of Hashem. Male kol haaretz kavodo. What does that mean? It means that Hashem is here. Sometimes our sometimes our experience of avoda is that our avoda is experienced as if male kol haaretz kavodo. I sense Hashem here with me. Everything is good. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is here, holding my hand with me, making my reality, creating my experiences. I see the Mamali Kol Almin within the experiences I have. I see the Silviv Kol Almin transcending those experiences and being even bigger than what I can conceptualize and internalize through the experiences that I'm having, which are just conditionally and definitionally defined and limited by the human experience of this world. I see HaKadosh Baruch Hu in those experiences. I experience the awe of the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's one way of experiencing HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world. However, a second way of experiencing this, Rav Nosson says, it's impossible to be that way all the time. It's impossible to be in a sense of devekus with a present HaKadosh Baruch Hu all the time, of Malei Kol Haaretz Kavodo, of Torah and Tefillah and Avoda, in the sense of it's doing things for me. I feel spiritually charged by the spiritual experience of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that I'm currently having, because I see and I feel how God is filling all of reality. He's here with me and filling all of my reality. That is one aspect of the experience of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but it's not the only one. And that experience of HaKadosh Baruch Hu cannot exist all the time. Rather, he says, sometimes it's necessary to experience bittul. Sometimes it's necessary to experience the absence of that feeling, the absence of Malei Kol Haaretz Kavodo. Sometimes you don't feel like HaKadosh Baruch Hu is here with you. And that aspect of avoda b'bechina shniya, he says, that's shemechafshin umevakshim achar kavodo yisparach bebechinas ayem makom kavodo. That second sense of avoda is that a person is searching and seeking and asking, wondering, where is the kavod of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Where is the presence of God? Where is the weighty, present, heavy reality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in my life, in the sense of not Malei Kol Haaretz Kavodo, but Ayem Makom Kavodo. Where is the place of Hashem's kavod? Because it's not here. I'm not feeling it. I'm davening and I'm learning and nothing is happening. I feel katnos. I feel depressed. I feel atzvos, not simcha. I don't feel simcha. I don't feel content. I don't feel present. I don't feel satisfied with the reality that I'm living. Instead, I'm feeling the absence of simcha, the absence of or heder, or the absence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence, And I wonder and I ask and I seek, Aye Makom Kavodo, where are you? These are the two aspects of Avodas Hashem that Rabbi Nosson lays out for us. One is an experience of Or, the other is an experience of Choshech. One is an experience of Simcha, of joy, in a spiritual sense, in a deep sense of God is here with me. Everything around me and everything in me is all being made at this very moment by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Male kol haaretz kavodo, kol haaretz, every single thing and every reality, and me, myself, and every fiber of my being is male kavodo, is filled with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's kavod. And I feel it, and I see it, and I know it, and I can declare it. Male kol haaretz kavodo. That's simcha. That's simcha. But sometimes, inevitably, we don't experience simcha. Inevitably, life is a roller coaster, and we're sometimes up with simcha and malei kol haaretz kavodo, and sometimes we're down in atzvos, in marashachora, in choshech, in a sense of darkness and lack and absence, and we ask, Aye makom kavodo, where are you? You're not here. If you were here, I wouldn't be asking because you would be here. And I would say, Malek Kalar's Kavodo. But I don't feel you here. I don't feel Hashem's presence here. And so I ask, Aye Makom Kavodo. And Rabbi Nosson goes on and he talks about how the avoda of Aye Makom Kavodo, the avoda of I don't see you, I don't feel you, it's katnos, it's choshech, it's hester panim, it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu seems to be absent from my story right now. Rabbi Nosson says that's a very, 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 very high level. Why? Because if you're attentive to it, and if you recognize that currently I'm experiencing an Aye Makom Kavodo moment, and you actually ask, Aye Makom Kavodo, where are you? And you search, and you ask, and you seek, all of that produces an access point and a connection to something that's much, much higher than the tangible presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Malei Kol Haaretz Kavodo. By sinking into the reality of you're not here, but even though you're not here, I'm asking, where are you? And asking, where are you, forces me to look and search within your absence to find how you're present, even within the absence. That leads to something much, much higher. Rabbi Nosson describes how Aye Makom Kavodo, the experience of katnus that leads to hishtokukus and yearning and seeking and desire and asking, where are you? And I'm looking for you and I'm trying to find you. That leads to an ability to access something very, very high, something called the Maimer Sasim. The silent Maimer before Maaseh Bereshis. We know that Chazal tell us in Pirkei Avos that Basara Mamaros Nivra Olam, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world with 10 Mamaros. He spoke, so to speak. He spoke Kaviyachol 10 times, and that brought all of reality into existence. But if you read Parshas Bereshis, you only see 9 Vayomer Elokims. And so this leads to the idea that there's a 10th Vayomer Elokim. The 10th Vayomer Elokim is something that can't say Vayomer Elokim because it's so high and it's so indescribable. It's the very, very first mimer of that creates Bereshis, right? Bereshis is the beginning of the creative process. Something had to kickstart that creative process, the beginning of that creative process. Now there's a beginning point. What kickstarted? What happened? There's a mimer sasim. There's a amira, so to speak. There's a statement and a saying of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Kaviyachol, but it can't, the Chumash can't even tell us that something was said because it's so high, it's so abstract, it's so uncontained that it's silent. And so the Maimer Sasum, which corresponds to Keser, the 10th Sphira, 9 Spheras are utterable, but the 10th Sphira, Keser, is not utterable. It's the Maimer Sasum that begins Bereshis, that happens before Bereshis, that the Chumash doesn't even tell us about. That Maimer Sasum, contained within Bereshis, that's a very, very high thing. And that Maimer Sasim is the absence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is always presence within our constructed reality in our own heads, in our own feelings, in our own experiences, in our bodies, in our emotions, in our intellects, in the world around us where we can see Malei Kol Haaretz Kavodo in every blade of grass and in every leaf and in every dog barking and in every feeling I have and thought I have and action I do and everything that everyone does around me and the table I'm sitting at and the chair I'm sitting in. All of that is Malei Kol Haaretz Kavodo, yes, but all of that is taking HaKadosh Baruch Hu and seeing HaKadosh Baruch Hu within a framework of tachtonim, of physical reality, of presence, but presence within something that I can comprehend because I'm seeing it, I'm comprehending it, I'm experiencing it. That's not actually HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A much higher, still not HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but a higher sense of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a higher access point of Devekus is the Devekus that we experience when we ask, Aye Makom Kavodo, where are you? When you ask Aye Makom Kavodo, immediately you're transported into the sense of there's HaKadosh Baruch Hu here because I'm asking where are you? And the thing that I can't sense is much higher than anything I can possibly sense. It's the Maimer Sasum. It's the thing that can't be said that kickstarts all of creation. It's Keser. It's Keser. And so what Rabbi Nassim says, and what we can glean from this, I think, is that the way that we can transform, the way that sadness, atzvos, is transformed into joy, as Rabbi Nachman teaches us here in Torah Chav Gimel, the way we transform atzvos, sadness, mar shchora, depression, into joy, is by recognizing that the absence of simcha, the absence of a malei kol haaretz kavodo, the absence of an appreciation of ein od milvado, that you are here with me, and I see it and I realize it and I'm experiencing it, that absence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that hester panim, that is the door that leads us into something much, much, much deeper, a much higher connection to a higher sense or a higher appreciation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that doesn't have to be put into words, that can't be put into words, that can't be put into the box of experience of this world, malei kol haaretz kavodo. It's known because I feel it in my bones, but I don't even feel it in my bones because that's already defined, and that's malei kol haaretz kavodo. I know it on a much higher level and in a much higher sense, and it's a much more profound gilui of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence and everything's presence within HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but not intangible presence. But in the absence of tangible presence, which alerts me to something that there's much high, to the fact that there's something much, much higher than whatever can be contained in tangible sense of presence. And this is part of exactly what the Nes Purim is all about. The Nes Purim is all about Hester Panim, and it's all about the Gilui Elokus within Hester Panim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not found anywhere in the Megillah. The Megillah is a story that seems to be all a matter of Aye Makom Kavodo. As the Gemara says, Esther says, when she goes and approaches Achashverosh, Keli Lama Azavtani, genuinely, everybody thinks HaKadosh Baruch Hu is missing from the picture. Aye Makom Kavodo, you're not here. You're not here with us. Where are you? Put on sackcloth and we go and pray and cry and scream in the streets. Because we don't know where you are, we don't see you here with us. And even as the story unfolds, it's not an unfolding of obvious nisim niglaim where we can say malei kol haaretz kavodo zeh keli vanveyu, as we said by Yitzias Mitzrayim and Kriyas Yamsuf. That's not the Nes of Purim. The Nes of Purim is a Nes of Aye Makom Kavodo, but in that sense, it's much, much, much higher. It's a much higher access to a much higher reality that even in the absence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is present, but he's present in such a high way that his presence can't be felt within the kalim of this world. And that realization, which is born from atzvos, which is born from sadness, which is born from the Mara Shechora, dragging that Mara Shechora into the circle of dancing and appreciating that even the atzvos and even the absence is also an expression of a HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of the Simchah, but it's a much deeper expression of Simchah, of something that is higher than we can even grasp. Then we can transform that atzvos into a very high sense of Simchah. And this relates to something Rabbi Nachman teaches in Torah Kuf Nun Hey. Rabbi Nachman teaches in Torah Kuf Nun Hey that the source of all atzvos, the source of all sadness and depression in the world that a person experiences, all of the Mar Shechora, right? The people on the outside of the circle who are not dancing, who you're dragging into the circle, where do they come from? Where do those inner characters within us who are sad and depressed and not dancing, not besimcha, where do they come from? Rabbi Nachman says in Torah Kuf Nun Hey, they come from chisaron emunah. All atzvos, all absence of joy, all depression, all despondency, it comes from a chisaron emunah, a deficiency, a lack of higher and higher and more complete and more whole levels of absolute and total trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And sadness then is just a symptom. It's not the disease. The disease is chisaron emuna. If we want to know how to transform atzvus into simcha, as Rabbi Nachman says we can do here in Torah Chaf Gimel, if we want to know how to transform atzvus into simcha, all we need to do is be able to understand and appreciate where the atzvus is coming from. It's coming from a chisaron emuna. It's coming from exactly this question. Aye makom kavodo. Where are you? I don't see you. I can't trust you. I can't rely on you. I'm not ready to do a trust fall into your arms because I can't see you behind me. And the way to solve the atzvus, the way to correct the atzvus, is to lean into emuna, Rabbi Nachman prescribes in Torah Kuf Nun Hey. The way we transform atzvus into simcha is by correcting the chisaron emuna that underlies it, by appreciating that the atzvus itself is a source of a much higher access point, a much higher connection, a much higher opportunity to be misdavek and appreciate and connect to a much higher sense of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Aye Makom Kavodo, the Hester Panim that's hidden behind the Megillah, that's revealed specifically within the Hester Panim of the Megillah. And in that sense, Be'ezras Hashem, hopefully, come Purim, we can transform all of the Hester Panim that we experience, all of the atzvus that we experience becomes a building block and a lever that we can use to then leverage and turn into deeper and deeper searching for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and deeper searching produces deeper and deeper appreciations that really, really male kol haaretz kavodo in much, much more profound ways than we could ever realize on our own.